revolutions now. While they're standing in the welfare line, hey, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for my promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sound. Hey, poor people gonna rise up, get theirs, yeah. Poor people gonna rise up and take what's there. Don't you know you better run, 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 run. Are you running, y'all? Oh, don't you better run, 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 run. Hi guys, hello. Ke Lerato wa ga Matsumela, also known as Lerato Sibanda. Just wanted to touch base with y'all on the Sunday night. Some of y'all probably you are preparing for the week. We're taking a little bit like the 7 colors. But some of us we've been here just in consciousness almost the whole day. I was almost like I've been stuck in just this place of consciousness, just engaging, internally. This topic that's kind of been hounding me this whole week. And I think it was on Monday when I sat down and I typed out an opinion piece about the Rainbow Nation ideology and the Rainbow Nation meta-narrative. And I was trying to sort of engage it, explicate it, and really be asking, is this Rainbow Nation ideology still relevant? Are we, in all practicality, a Rainbow Nation? And just for background, for some who may not know what in the world I am talking about, in 1994, with the introduction of the first democratic government, which was basically an ANC-led government, our beloved former president, Udada Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, spoke and basically imparted and disseminated an idea of being a rainbow nation. I call it an ideology because it wasn't just an idea in isolation, but it really was a system of ideas. And that government tried as best as they could to enforce it systematically through policy and in whichever way in which they had the power and the agency to. And aside from that, just the rhetoric of Rainbow Nation, Rainbow Nation, Rainbow Nation was really popular. It grew popular and it became kind of sort of like in our cultural imaginary, it became our identity. I think even the world looked down on South Africa like, who is this? The same country which had apartheid, the same country which was so segregated, the same country which kind of sort of was almost like modern day. It was like a modern day genocide, right? And all of a sudden we were singing Simunye, we were singing songs of reconciliation, and there was the TRC. I mean, it was like one perfect, beautiful land of unicorns, as it were. And I've just been studying and revisiting history, old history and more recent history, because history is anything that has already happened. Even what happened a minute ago is history, right? So that's why I say old history, and that's why I also say more recent history. And in my reimagining of the Rainbow Nation, I've seen that this narrative as endearing as it is a bit lofty, and it has some hypocrisies within it. And also, in my revisiting this Rainbow Nation meta-narrative, I've also sort of seen how it worked beautifully and achieved a lot as well in enforcing reconciliation and serving as a kind of catalyst to an integrated society. Because before then, apartheid basically it was a segregated society where Black people were shunned, through the institution of the Homelands Act, they were shunned to live in the peripheries of urban regions and industrialized and upgraded and well-run regions, right? Where there was basically no infrastructure, no water, no sanitation, where all the rubble was kept, okay? That land where you can't even really farm. That's where Black people were shunned to the so-called homelands, which we today call uh, Lokshin, Egasi, townships. And so that's where we were before ANC. And let's give kudos to ANC. As much as this party really is lost some credibility, as long as they are buckling under the pressure and weight of being in power, and as much as they've got so many factions and a lot is going on. Netizens will understand what I mean by that, but a lot is going on there. But that's not my topic today. That's not what I want to engage today. So I'm not going to go deep into that. But we have to acknowledge that this is the party that really pulled down the strangleholds of apartheid and took up arms and did what they did. And many lives were lost as they took up the struggle to fight to reclaim South Africa as belonging to the people. And the people, first and foremost, being Black people, right? Because South Africa was basically mostly people of color before pre-colonization. But also it became modified to say that it belongs to all people, right? So equality and forgiveness and reconciliation, and to say that as much as some South Africans were products of colonization, um, were descendants of colonizers, but to say that, okay, we are here now, let's make this thing work. Let's become a rainbow nation, a multicultural nation. And that's what happened. And Dada really drove this meta narrative and, this rhetoric of we are this, one South African identity. This, a South African is basically someone who's liberal and understands that all identities matter, and we if even come together to forge one South Africanness. As much as it's so endearing, and as much as it really inspired a spirit of love and unity, and I think it's part and parcel of what makes South Africa beautiful. I don't know why do I have something in my throat. I'm still gonna speak no matter what. I just have a dry throat. I must drink more water. So even with that, at the end of the day, we can't celebrate unity without also celebrating our diversity, right? If we think of a rainbow is this miraculous beam of light shafts that have refracted into different colors, primary colors, 7 colors, and they stand as solid colors that can be identified. Oh, there's purple. Oh, there's orange, right? But also in a rainbow, there are some narrow spaces of blurring. So this rainbow nation, a nation basically meaning a community of people groups, different people groups having gathered together to coexist and abide. So if we think of rainbow nation and we think of that phrase, is to say that, we are microcosm, a world of people from different walks of life, and yet we have found common ground. We have found one voice, and that voice is this nation, South Africa. We carry it each on our shoulders, and we're going to love it and take care of it, and that's what unifies us. I think that's what made the Rainbow Nation narrative valid. It wasn't to say that we are the same. We're not the same. There's a lot of inequalities in this country, and they have persisted in as much as there's been a lot of opportunities afforded to those who were formerly marginalized and oppressed and segregated. But we have to acknowledge that the gaps still persist. And whether you like it or not, Black people and other people of color are still poor. They still remain the poor of the poorest, and those inequalities that were there and could be identified in 1948. So that's quite a while back, but they can still be identified today, even with the institution of BEE and BEEE and all the things that have been made, policies that have been put in place, motions that have been put in place to sort of narrow the gaps, the inequality gaps, the economic gaps. But guess what? The gaps still remain. And what equality brought, the Rainbow Nation brought, was to say it just picked the cream of the crop of Black people who were made rich, and they've grown to become more richer and richer and richer. Unfortunately, a great number of them have even become more corrupt, and they will do anything to keep the Black poor and down in the dumps and down under the economic line. So at the end of the day, the more things have changed, the more they've also stayed the same. And so this is the things that I've been grappling with, engaging in my mind because of my own consciousness, but also because of the journals, the texts that I've been reading and engaging due to my academic project. What does it mean to be a South African in 2022, on the 6th of November, 2022? What does it mean to be a South African in 2023? Who is a South African? Furthermore, who is a Rainbow Nation? And I use the word who intentionally. I didn't say what is a Rainbow Nation. I said who is a Rainbow Nation, because as much as we come up with all these lofty ideas and philosophies, at the end, nation states comprise of people. And people mean humanity and identity, individuals with serious stories, real lived experiences. The lived experiences of most South Africans is not Ayoba. We are all a traumatized nation, Black to white to, Indians, colors, and expats and natives or foreign nationals. And, that's also the things that we need to grapple with and we need to firstly acknowledge before we can reconcile. Who is a South African? I live in Cape Town currently, and I have seen there's a lot of, a lot of children of foreign nationals who were born here. Some are in primary school, some are in high school, some might have even gone beyond high school. Yes, their parents may be Congolese, their parents may be from Ghana or wherever, but they were born here. They are South African citizens. So in every way, they should be accepted and celebrated as South Africans, but are South Africans who are indigenous to this land, do we acknowledge them as South Africans? Who is a South African? And why, if we are a Rainbow Nation, have we not honored the natives of this land who are the Khoisan by officiating them and including their languages, or at least one of their languages, because they've got more than one, e.g. Nama, by including their language as part of our official languages, whereas while we have the colonial language or the language of the children of the colonial masters as one of our official languages, that being Afrikaans, and yet we can't have Nama as part of our official language. We have taken a language from the Khoisan group and actually appropriated it by including it as part of the coat of arms. But it was not in celebration and true honoring and commemoration, because if it was, we would have at this time already listed that language as one of our official languages. It was taken more, in an appropriation, almost as if we are making a certain people group a fetish. What an injustice. So this Rainbow Nation philosophy is valid, but it's also hypocritical as well. It has loopholes which need to be tied in. Who is a South African in 2022? And forgive me for stumbling, it's very late in the night. But who is a South African in 2022? Who is a South African in 2023? These are issues I'm grappling with. And is this Rainbow Nation meta-narrative still valid? Does it perhaps need to be modified or remixed? Or should it be scratched altogether, and must we start from the ground? Because as a nation state, not only had we been captured, but I feel like even our psyche has been captured and our national pride has been compromised because of a buckling government. But aside from the government, when we look at people on the ground and we look at the citizenry of this nation, we are a troubled and traumatized people. We have generational traumas and pent up anger and aggression, which can be addressed through revisiting and reimagining our national identity and consciousness. These are the things that are on my mind. These are the things that I'm thinking about. These are the things I'm grappling with. And I think this is about the sixth video I've recorded. And that's why I'm stuttering and stumbling all over the place because, these are matters I'm very passionate about, aside from being tired. And I feel like these are matters that are very pivotal that, thought leaders like myself should perhaps raise. As a nation, we are people who have a lot to say, but half the time we say and keep them in our little clusters, in our little segregated communities, immediate communities. But, when it comes to the public sphere, we all feel afraid and feel censored to some degree. So we still kind of like segregated in our imaginary. Is it really wrong to speak about my blackness, about how proud I am of being black and want to authenticate my identity by sometimes seizing opportunity, even, you know, um, embracing my right of expression by talking about who I am as Lerato and the fact that I'm, you know, um, been reclaiming my tongue, being reclaiming, anytime a South African speaks about being black and proud, it's almost like, whoa, is he or she a Malema um loyalist or an EFF member, or this one is angry. We are in a generation where when you want to speak about who you are, just because you want to affirm and validate and love and celebrate yourself, it's almost like you are an angry Black person. And I sometimes feel for our white fellow citizens because also when they want to speak about their whiteness or their Afrikanerness, if I can put it that way, then they are also automatically labeled as racist. But I feel like we should create a public sphere where we must start each sharing our narratives. Yes, some people may be speaking from a place of racism, some people may be speaking from a place of hatred, but I feel like nonetheless, instead of having pent up anger, we are in a season where as South Africans we are not okay and we each need to authenticate ourselves. We each all looking for our own voice and agency. And I think in that, if we get it right and we do it right, then it will be easier to have a more holistic and realistic and sustainable reconciliation and be reconciled in the true sense of being reconciled, not just reconciled because there's certain legislation that were put in place, but reconciled in spirit, right? Because we still kind of sort of divided, guys, if we think about it. We are integrated. I mean, as a Black person, I'm currently living in a suburb, in the city. I mean, if I think about my grandparents, they were not allowed to live or even rent in the city. They're not allowed to even be found in the city after a certain time. They were given curfews because of the Donbass. So I'm not saying that there hasn't been progress and freedom, that I mean, we've been freed from from many oppressive rules and laws and what have you. But what I'm saying is there's still a lot more, and that's fact. There's still a lot more. We are still in process. Some things will take generations and time, and I think South Africa is at a place where it's, the very ground of South Africa is crying. We are not settled because we need to come back to the drawing board, and there needs to be more dialogues and another level of reconciliation. And I think part of the reconciliation, and I speak from my lived experience as a Black person, number one, as a Black South African, number two, part of our reconciliation is, um, I think, mother tongue instruction. You know, when I think about how, my generation is being stripped of its identity, mostly because we are put in places and spaces where we are forced to speak in English because we want to progress, we want opportunities. And so from grade RRR, already subconsciously and consciously and in every way that I'm supposed to master this English tongue. You see it when, you come from creche and you're able to say, my name is Lerato. You see how even, your black neighbors are like, ooh, this is cool, I'm gonna know, yay. And we are awarded. And, English becomes a token for success. It becomes a tool for success. And so we immerse ourselves in it. And the education system also enforces it on us. And so I feel like that's a big issue. It was an issue when we had Bantu education and Afrikaans was imposed on us. But this may be a bit of a controversial topic, but it's also an issue that English is imposed on us. I'm a postgraduate student, but also I'm a seminar leader, and I've seen also how when I'm tutoring first year students, for example, and how the one who comes from a school where they were really trained in the English tongue and from so-called private or Model C schools, and another who comes from perhaps, a school in the township or village, or maybe a school where they were not really, so adept at mother tongue instruction or teaching English or whatever the reason. The one who knows English better or is more proficient in that language in writing and in talking, using that language in communication, they have more of a self-esteem. They're more confident to engage, to answer the topic matter, the subject matter within the teaching space. They write better, they get higher marks. But it's not to say that they've got a higher intelligence quotient than the other person. And so we have to acknowledge that decolonization within the education sphere is very pertinent, it's very necessary, it's a very critical matter. And we have been talking about it, we've been enforcing it. Well, those who are really purporters of decolonizing education, they've already done a lot for us. When I think about the fees and the rose must fall, a lot of work was done, especially when it comes to changing building names and statue names and removing certain figures on campuses that are representational of oppression and segregation and colonization. I mean, I'm not saying that nothing has been done. What I'm really doing right now is just basically creating a forum for dialoguing and communication. I'm not saying that I'm the first to talk about these things, neither am I the last. Okay. I am just, as an active leader and a thought leader, an active citizen, I'm just locating myself in these dialogues, and I'm also taking part. I'm using my online space to take part. I'm using my online space to put certain topics out there, not to promote hatred or anything like that. I hope that's not how people would take my voice note, because I've tried really to stand at different vantage points and circle around, this topic, um, almost like as a kind of street, street, street seminar, bedroom seminar, what have you. And so I've tried to stand it from different vantage points, though I can't separate myself from the fact that I'm a Black South African and I'm coming from that perspective, because I can only speak about what I know. I am what I am. And my lived experience is a lived experience of a Black person immersed in a very wide systemic world still. Who is a South African in this day and age? Another thing that I want to raise is this. How come, as Black South Africans, I have seen and observed when we see or hear or let's say, if a Black, even to meet a Black American, right? Somebody you meet, maybe even passing by, let's say you live in a township, and then you meet a Black American, somebody is from the US. Why? I feel like, people would rally around that person to celebrate them and be like, America. And they would really make sure that the person's time in South Africa is really top notch. But how come if you're to bump into a Ghanaian, for example, in the township, then it's like, "Makwere kwere a batlang mo man." ba ba loko wa tswang ko teng ba re tsela memmereko ba re tsela basadi ba ira so le so le so. Why is it that we've got a more of a compassion and humanity towards Black, um, people of color who are from the global north, and yet those who are from the global south, we look down on them almost the same way that European point of view still looks at Africa as the dark continent. Why is it that we hail and we raise up and we celebrate people of color from North America, South America, from the Caribbean, from those kind of spaces, and yet those who are from the global north? Is it because of their tongue? Is it because of their dress? Is it because of these superficial things? Is it because they don't speak English like an American, or English that is more kind of refined from how media has sort of, um media has sort of like the films we watch and the pop culture we consume has sort of made the American, especially the Black American, as the marker or the symbol of coolness that most people want to achieve, refinement and a swagger that most people want to achieve and attain. And mainstream media has made the African, the one who speaks English but with that accent, it's made them seem as if they are lost in the world. They're still trying to attain or find more of a refined tongue, and based on that, they are more closer to the African savage. And then the idea and the stereotype of an African savage is a colonial one. But why is it that even as Black people, e.g., and I'm not saying every Black South African, but typically most Black South Africans, we tend to look down. Like if you're in a taxi and then somebody says, speaks in that tongue, this one, um, I'm gonna get off robot. You're like, this one is from Ghana, from wherever. We really look at them in that way. Xenophobia. It's a spirit of hatred. It's a spirit of segregation. It's a spirit of saying you are a lesser African than I. You are from another African country. You are a lesser African than I, a Black South African. If you think about it, it is a kind of apartheid, because apartheid means, let's live separately because I'm a better species than you. So we can't mix. We can't mix. You and I, we are on different levels. You stay in your lane, I stay in my lane, and let's not mix. Unless you come into my lane to work for me. But otherwise, we can't share the same table. I'm speaking poetically, but really that's what apartheid is. And if you think about it like that, you will see that apartheid as a spirit still manifests itself in certain ideologies, still manifests itself in certain policies. It manifests itself in the culture and the spirit and attitude of xenophobia. It manifests itself through gentrification. It manifests itself. It still does. And these are things that I'm challenging us to. And these are sort of issues that are so critical and pertinent. They sort of like bring down the curtain, or not really bring down the curtain, but they rip to shreds the fact that we are this rainbow nation. I think we're at a place in South Africa where we're starting to see that the rainbow has grown into a big blob and it is blurry. And we are walking through a very dark tunnel, literally and proverbially, because load shedding, hello, even load shedding itself is prophesying that, hey, we are in darkness. We are in darkness in every way. And sometimes it's good to know that we're in a dark place, a place of rediscovery, of having to, confront ourselves. Sometimes it is good to be affronted with our mess, the fruit of our degeneration. Sometimes it's good because then it forces us to wake up, to Bagarbort, right? To wake up from our slumber and our sleep and our delirium, from, oh, Rainbow Nation, Simunya, we are one. These are things that are in my head. These are things I'm grappling with. Very serious issues, but nonetheless, I've released them, I've unleashed them, and it's for you guys to chew on them, or maybe not. It really is. Ana stress. It's really up to you. But this is me. This is my thought leadership kind of space on Facebook. Let's call it, what shall we call it? What shall we call it? Let's call it dialogues. Let's call it dialogues, or let's call it dialogues, and we'll update the name as we go. But let's start to dialogue, and from the dialoguing, hopefully we'll find a kind of revolution. And that's why I was playing that song by Tracy Chapman, The Revolution of the Mind, right? All right, guys. Finally, the tables are starting to turn. Talk about a revolution. Peace out. Kita lebona.